Welcome to another Loranda instructional video. My name is John Moss, and today I'm going to discuss why it's important for both farmland owners and tenants to have a written lease. At first glance, the idea of not having all the terms of the rental arrangement in writing seems irresponsible, especially when many farm properties today are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the income from these tracts are often well into five figures. Yet agriculture is somewhat unique in that many owner-tenant relationships have stretched over several decades and across several generations. And the prevailing thought for many landowners still is, well, your grandfather started farming for my grandfather with just a handshake, and that's good enough for me. While that sentiment imbues an implicit trust in the farmer, it also overlooks the fact that farming has evolved immensely over the past several years, and the practices that may have worked well for the grandfathers may not be as prudent or effective today. For many landowners, the appeal of the oral farm lease is in its simplicity. But in this simplicity, you can also create risk and misunderstanding. Take a few minutes and think about your farm and all the variables that might cause problems. From who you have your agreement with, is it an individual, a corporation, or a third party, and are they the ones actually doing the work, to what the tenant is specifically leasing from you. Is it the entire property, just the tillable acres, the improvements, or some combination? From the length of the lease, 1 year or multiple ones, to both the specific starting and ending dates of the arrangement. Oral leases typically begin on March 1 of each year and end on February 28th, while modern leases run with a calendar year. And then there are the income and expense items. How and when will you receive your income, which is very important to those who rely on the cash flow to pay bills, to who should be responsible for paying the various expenses. It's important to note that the allocation of the income and expense items has evolved as farming practices have changed. 40 years ago, it was common for landlords to pay the tenant for combining and trucking costs, in addition to paying for all lime that was applied. Today, most leasing arrangements have eliminated the combine and trucking reimbursements, while the lime cost is equally shared. Even the traditional 50-50 split in crop income in many areas has shifted to 55-45 in the owner's favor. Keep in mind that it's nearly impossible to cover every conceivable scenario in the typical farm lease, as each property, owner, and tenant is unique. However, most modern rental agreements do contain a diverse set of provisions that are tailored to address the most common problems, which, in addition to those mentioned earlier, would include descriptive language that outlines the duties and responsibilities of the tenant, the manner in which all management and business procedures are to be made, and the remedies in case of default, death, or termination. These last two items are critically important when the current owner or their heirs might want to sell the property in the future. A written lease can be structured so that it automatically terminates each year without further notice, which is quite different than the termination requirements of an oral agreement. We consider this termination issue so important that we have developed a separate video that you can watch on this topic. Fortunately, landowners today don't have to start from scratch when they're ready to switch from an oral arrangement. In the Midwest, each state has an agricultural land-grant university that has created a template for the landlord and the tenant to follow that can be easily downloaded from the internet. Most of these documents already have the necessary language that would be relevant for the typical farm scenario. So all that the two parties need to do is fill in the known facts, cross out any paragraphs that don't apply, and then add anything that may be exclusive to the situation. If this process still seems overwhelming, then you may want to consult with an attorney, a farm manager, or a professional ag consultant for ideas and advice. I truly believe that farmland ownership today should be treated as a business, just like any other investment. Utilizing this approach, which would include having a well-written lease that is constantly updated to account for any changes with the parties or in farming practices, can help prevent future problems between the landowner and the farmer. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and have learned more about farm leases. Outlining the responsibilities of the parties is not that difficult to do, and the peace of mind that it provides can be quite comforting. Thanks for joining us again today, and best wishes with your land investment.